I want to begin this press conference with a quote from a great, famous Greek philosopher, Aristotle. And he encapsulates where we're at on our journey of building a better society for all. I quote, "At his best, man is the noblest of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst. At his best, man is the noblest of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst." End of quote. I want St. Kitts and Nevis to be the best. And in order to achieve this, we must adopt a zero-tolerance approach to crime. And we as a government and people will continue to strengthen our security forces so that they are resilient in their fight against crime. We will put in place an infrastructure that ensures sustainability so that our legacy, the legacy of the team unity, government, and people, will be one of which everyone can be justifiably proud. My government continues to confront the challenges of law and order, and we are doing all that we reasonably can to reverse the trend of violent crime that has bedeviled our country for over 20 years, reaching a high of about 36 homicides in 2011. This was an unacceptable state of affairs, and we have been doing what we can to contain and reduce incidences of violent crime. Our Commissioner of Police has advised me that as at this date last year, we had on record 15 homicides. For the year so far, we are down to 10. This represents a significant 33% drop in homicides. Although we are moving in the right direction, we still must do a lot better on this score. I want, however, to commend all the hard-working and professional law enforcement officers who give their very best to keep our people and country safe. We thank them. In a manner of speaking, they are our unsung heroes. The public has called repeatedly for more severe penalties to be imposed on criminals, particularly repeat offenders and those committing offenses related to the illegal use and possession of guns. My cabinet has agreed to increase the penalty with respect to the illegal possession and use of firearms. We would also wish that those on bail are not allowed to repeat their criminal acts without due sanction. On this score, at the next sitting of the Parliament, we will pass the Firearms Amendment Act and the Bail Amendment Act to make them more consistent with our people's views and expectation of our justice system. Given the prevalence of guns in horrific killings, we propose to seek Parliament's approval in doubling the penalty for a summary offence from a maximum term of 10 years in certain cases to now a maximum term of imprisonment not exceeding 20 years. The penalty for indictable offences is a maximum of life imprisonment. Summary offences include the importation or exportation of a firearm without a permit, the manufacturing of firearms without a license, and unlawful possession of a firearms. These, once the law is passed, will now exact a penalty of a maximum of 20 years rather than 10, hitherto the case. It is our view, and the view of our law-abiding citizens, that dangerous criminals do not belong on our streets. Every effort will be made to eliminate any opportunity that they may seize upon to victimize innocent people in our country. In relation to bail, therefore, we intend to make it more difficult for criminals to receive bail in relation to both a capital offense, such as murder, and a firearm offense at the same time. This will mitigate against criminals on bail exacting vengeance on witnesses and innocent people in our society. We propose that the court would consider imposing a monitoring device, for example, ankle bracelet on certain persons as a condition of bail. We believe that the risk of loss of lives has to be given appropriate weight in the balancing between the loss of lives and liberty. The Attorney General, of course, would elucidate on these legislative amendments, perhaps at question time. As the agencies of law and order are at the fulcrum of the state's legitimate response, we have, over the past 2.5 years thereabout, strengthened the manpower of the police, reorganized and restructured it along 4 directorates: crime, operations, administration, resources, technology and intelligence, and service improvement. We have invested in mentoring and training via Bramshill Policing Advisors. We have implemented a new strategic plan. We have invested in the transportation for the police, for the Defense Force, including our Coast Guard and prison service. We have hired more persons at the prisons, the police and Defense Force. As we speak, 34 more police are undergoing training at the police training school. Some 28 others are being trained at the Defense Force. Additionally, only this week we gave approval for another 14 persons to work at Her Majesty's Prison under our STEP program. Our investments have not stood there. We have invested in forensic technology, and we are heartened by some of the positive results. The deployment of a new automated fingerprint identification system has increased the speed of processing to such an extent that the cases dealt with for 2017 to date, I am advised, have already exceeded the numbers that we were able to process for the whole of last year. Our CCTV project continues to be rolled out. Our cameras are already installed at Shadwell. I'm advised Cannery is complete. Taylor's Range, Parcher, Newpont site. Considerable work has been done at our command center. This is the centerpiece of all of this because all of the images are then transmitted back to the command center where they are observed. What does this really mean? It means that we have increased the ability to detect and prosecute crime more than ever before. The security cameras are quietly recording events as they unfold and transmitting them back to the command center. The new microscope, which we invested heavily in, has provided speed, accuracy, and the ability to share information in real time with experts overseas, resulting in firearms being seized and examined in relation to some 18 crime scenes. I gather as a result of the involvement of this technology, 12 arrests have been made, including 7 for homicides, 3 for rape as a result of DNA identification. 2 arrests have been made for burglary and robbery, and a count of fingerprint evidence. Although these are early days, it is a work in progress, and we can now secure evidence more accurately and quickly to arrest and lead finally to prosecution stages. Thanks to our second High Court and our second High Court judge, on St. Kitts. Cases are moving through our court system, I'm advised, more efficiently. The benefit of the additional judge was experienced recently while the sitting judge in Charlestown was away. The second judge from St. Kitts, or one of the two judges, went there and the assizes proceeded smoothly. Now, in the context of our investment in the judiciary, there is no break in the assizes. Justice should be observed more quickly. One Douglas Adams once said, "To give real service, you must add something which cannot be bought or measured with money, and that is sincerity and integrity." In this regard, our recruitment policy now requires that before anyone is admitted into our police service, they must undergo vetting. The results of vetting provide another indicator of the reliability of these potential recruits, highlighting their vulnerabilities and, of course, their strengths too. The results from polygraph testing feature then in what can be described as a composite quality assessment, which, when added to the educational level, references and background checks, will provide a comprehensive profile as to their suitability for employment. Polygraph testing will be the norm at all levels of policing in our federation. It is being applied in the recruitment and promotion evaluations at our Defense Force, including the Coast Guard, the Customs, and the Excise Department. As with the police and other security personnel, the polygraph program is being implemented because when the public has confidence in the integrity of our security forces, this leads to better information sharing by them with regard to criminal activity. We have been concerned about the entry of contraband in our prisons, and we are now procuring high-tech scanners which will en masse illicit actors and products, thereby preventing them from entering into our prisons undetected. The Committee for the Prerogative of Mercy has been activated, and I'm advised that the Honorable Senior Minister is chairman of that committee. In due course, we will learn more of its recommendation with regard to mercy to any of the inmates. Turning to our Customs and Coast Guard, I can report that our customs hardware will be further strengthened with greater intelligence gathering with our partners in the U.S. law enforcement agencies. Our Coast Guard fleet will be strategically engaged to interdict and intercept nefarious actors and their ill-gotten bounty on our seas. The strengthening of our borders is of paramount importance to us, and to this end, the Customs Department is implementing a number of measures that will make it more difficult for criminal activity and their purveyors to succeed in entering the Federation. When intelligence of a credible threat exists, enhanced searches of cargo are undertaken to ensure that no hidden contraband has been secreted in the shipments. The Canine Unit, which specializes in searching for guns and drugs, has been expanded, and it now reaches a complement of 12, up 3. There is greater collaboration and intelligence sharing between the law enforcement agencies, the Customs, the Coast Guard, the police, the Defense Force. Within the next week, I am advised that Customs will be employing an added touch to the new technology, and in this regard, Customs will have an app in Google's Play Store where our citizens can anonymously provide tips to Customs and can express any concern they may have about an officer's behavior. So if you think they are allowing the revenue to get away to their friends and neighbors, then we will now have an app in which you can report that undetected. If you think they are doing other wrong things, the app also will suffice for that. And if you think they are doing a wonderful job, we also want you to use the app to extend commendation. We want to appeal to all with information or concerns regarding any law enforcement officer in our police, in our defense force, in our Coast Guard, our prisons and customs and excise, to share that information or concern. Information leading to a successful prosecution of any dishonest law enforcement officer will be rewarded. We do this to enhance the integrity of our law enforcement agencies. The reason is simple. Those who are charged with protecting us cannot be the same ones who are undermining the integrity of the system and by extension exposing their co-workers and the civilian population to danger and harm. I repeat that those charged with protecting us cannot be the same ones who are undermining the integrity of the system and by extension exposing their co-workers and civilians to danger and harm. We have to put a stop to this. We have extended our recruitment effort overseas with a view to ensuring that adequate manpower is available for policing. By adding to the diversity of our human resource and the skill base of overseas recruits, we hope to enhance the quality of policing. We will, however, give priority to every interested citizen who meets the standards for recruitment. These are opportunities for our own people to play a significant part in shaping the future direction, the safety and security and well-being of our beloved country. I am in some ways indebted to a former commissioner of police who pointed out to me that our legislative resources must be in full service of public safety and security. And in that regard, the former commissioner pointed to a body of legislation covering several areas which were dormant. The National Defense Council Act, for example, which calls for the appointment of a national security advisor. That individual, according to the law, will be the chief professional advisor on security matters. Such a person should advise the government on matters relating to national security, assist in the coordination of national security activities among various government agencies, and encourage and facilitate cooperation among national security agencies. So the notion that we are in silos, this is my unit, little interaction, little sharing of information, those things should not happen. And I want to commend the leadership across these agencies who have already committed themselves and have been working very closely to bring an end to the sort of silo relationship among these important agencies. We have had outstanding cooperation between the prisons, the police, the defense force, and Coast Guard. We now need to continue on that path, and we now need to have someone, as it were, who could oversee that level of cooperation to ensure efficiencies and the efficacy of that particular operation. I'm advised by the PS of National Security that this position had been advertised, and just under 10 applicants submitted applications for the job. 2 of the persons were eventually shortlisted. One has done outstandingly relative to the other, and he is being shortlisted for engagement with the government, subject to certain other matters which are to be finalized by the Permanent Secretary in National Security. When that process is fully completed, more information would be provided. Regrettably, as we attempt to reverse the trend of law-breaking in our country, some inconvenience has to be endured by law-abiding citizens in order that the broader public good, safety, and security for all is achieved. And in some respects, although not analogous or similar, the change in our travel plans subsequent to the 9/11 is reflective of some of the new changes that we have to adjust to for the broader agenda of international safety and security of all who are traveling. Following a very strong presentation by our police regarding the need to enforce the Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 15.06, revised in 2009, the government has given its support to the enforcement of the law relating to tinting of vehicles. I want to pause to say several persons have been writing, texting, WhatsApping regard to this matter and wanting for there to be exception. The cabinet is determined there will be no exception to this rule. All must comply. And unless the police high command was to make a very persuasive case in the context of national security, the law will be enforced and should be enforced. I am advised that several of our law enforcement officers who had their vehicles tinted beyond norm, they have quickly done the right thing, including the Commissioner of Police. And therefore, it means then that no one of any lesser rank should expect that there would be exemption in relation to that matter. I am grateful for the broad public acceptance of the need to enforce the laws and the books, including those on tinting, especially in the context of the overwhelming evidence that the majority of gun-related homicides are associated with the use of rental and/or tinted vehicles used to facilitate escape. And let's face it, I have had complaints from several people. Somebody nearly overrun them. They hardly would remember a number if they could see the face, if only they could. So you have those challenges with the tinting. We're in a society where people remember you by your looks more easily than they record your vehicle number, that has created some challenge for ordinary people. I want to remind all people, in particular those in possession of vehicles, the Commissioner has advised that with regard to rental vehicles, the law is crystal clear. No tinting, absolutely none would be allowed. So whatever your rental agency, please, you should immediately move to remove those tints. Other vehicles, there is the need for transmission of light of 35% is the record. It's the law. And so we say, stay within the law. 35% light transmission, the legislation speak to. Do not break the law and then quarrel and create further offense. Non-compliance with this law on tinting could lead to a fine of $5,000. $5,000. I gather in some instances, Mr. Commissioner, when the police give you a little ticket, you pay what? You pay what? $150. The law, if convicted, $5,000 or imprisonment, or imprisonment to be exact, of 6 months. So let us not chance it, and then we have to fine $5,000, or we are faced with 6 months. Let us do what the law requires that we do. I want to appeal to all to comply with the law. Let good sense prevail, and let the intelligence-led policing policy guide the policy framework. Yesterday, the Commissioner of Police met with the private security service providers in St. Kitts to discuss why this is a necessary step at this time. A similar meeting with security service providers in Nevis will take place shortly. The seriousness of the crime situation in our federation must force the realization that it cannot be, it must not be business as usual. Some changes, some inconvenience even, will now have to happen if we are to turn the tide. So we ask of all to comply with the spirit and the letter of the law. Parliament is responsible for making the laws, and I want to report that the People's Parliament will meet again on June 13th, at which time some 9 or so bills will be presented to the Parliament. At least 4 of them will be debated and passed. Among them will be the Bail Amendment Act and, of course, the Firearms Amendment Act, where we bring stiffer penalties to the fore. In 2016, this government convened the Parliament on 9 occasions. For the record, this compares very favorably with the state of play under the bygone regime. Under the last regime, Parliament only met 4 times in 2014 and 6 times in 2013. As their time them neared to its natural end, they got less interested in the Parliament. You're surprised now to hear them speaking about Parliament and work at the Parliament. We met then 16 times over 2 years, 2015 and 2016. And the last regime met and made 10 times in their last 2 years going out of business. In 2016, we passed 15 bills which were of importance to several subsectors. We addressed matters to do with the fisheries and marine resources. And Monday in Cabinet, we were advised how important that particular passage of law was to preserve our integrity as part of the EU arrangements of which we are a part. Several other pieces of legislation were passed, including the BICO Arrangement Bill 2016, which should provide a systematic approach to payment for all those investors in BICO, like Ambassador Richard Keynes, as part of an OECS arrangement. So this is the people's work that we have been doing. We passed legislation amending the Small Estate Act, taking the sum to $25,000 from $5,000 to allow people with their small inheritance, such as many of the families of deceased former sugar workers, to be able to get an expedited process through our court. We responded then to other bits of legislation aimed at protecting the regional financial system. So we passed the Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation Bill. We passed what is known as the Common Reporting Standards Bill, which facilitates the automatic exchange of financial account information. We took steps to revamp our national savings schemes and the Savings Bank Act, which are being managed by our Treasury. And for all these work that we have done in 2016, we have received commendation in the IMF as recently as in the Article 4 consultation report of May 2017. The Deputy Financial Secretary is here, and she would record letters of commendation that we have had from the Global Forum with respect to some of the legislation. Most important for us is that the people must be assured that this Parliament is working on their behalf. I want to thank the Honourable Speaker of the National Assembly and the draft persons and support staff of the Parliament for their industry and discipline in facilitating the government's parliamentary agenda. Very often we do not pause to thank them, like the unsung heroes keeping our Parliament alive. They usually get disnoticement. We want to change that. So I want, in a good note, to also congratulate Speaker Perkins on the hosting this year of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association's meeting in St. Kitts, which will happen around the middle of this month. Our Parliament is one that is functioning in a manner that is consistent with the traditions of the Westminster model of democracy. It meets regularly, and it is presided over by a Speaker of integrity, dexterity, and experience, consistent with our laws. This session of Parliament is working well. We have, for example, disposed a motion of no confidence in the Speaker in quick order. And this must be seen in contrast to the 26-month wait, the period of shame and ignominy in relation to the motion of no confidence that was to happen and never happened under the last regime. Truth be told, this is perhaps the first time in history that a motion of no confidence was never tabled in the Parliament. That is part of the bad inheritance which we are attempting to correct. And that motion of no confidence, which the last administration dilly-dallied with and refused to table, ended costing the country several millions of dollars in legal fees, and it did incredible damage to the country's good name. I recall one Saturday morning meeting over at the Marriott, and the Attorney General, he was then a lowly lawyer in an experienced chamber, Byron it's called, and we met with representatives from the Commonwealth Group about how they were going to intervene quietly and discreetly to ask the government then to table the motion of no confidence. Nothing happened, and nothing would have happened under that administration. So we have come a mighty long way out of the parliamentary malaise, and we now have been afforded a fresh start thanks to the people. Equally, I'm pleased that we will bring new legislation at the next sitting of the Parliament to formalize and to operationalize the functioning of the Public Accounts Committee. For all the noise about there was a committee, I asked them to give me one report ever produced to the Parliament by that committee. Not one single report. It's like having a cricket team or a football team and they never played a match. They never produced any result. We want to change that because we are committed to a new program of good governance. And when we bring the new legislation, we will provide not only the wherewithal legislatively, but also financially and otherwise to make the public accounts function in the way it should. Finally, I want to say a brief note on the matter of health. And I believe our CMO, Chief Medical Officer, is here. And she perhaps would add a word or two with respect to the issue of health if needs be. I should say to you that our Team Unity government has a vested interest in the overall security of our federation, and not just in our national security. Our nation's health security is of paramount importance, since without good health and wellness, we would have nothing of value. As such, I want to encourage our residents and citizens to pay greater attention to their health and wellness. Prevention is still better and cheaper than the cure. As CARICOM lead spokesman and Health HIV Human Resources, I want to draw certain facts to the national attention and, of course, for national action. I am advised that the Caribbean region has the highest burden of chronic non-communicable diseases in the Americas. We have the highest burden of chronic non-communicable diseases in the Americas. The chronic non-communicable diseases are the leading causes of morbidity and mortality. That is the leading cause of death. They are responsible for more than 3 out of every 4 deaths in the Caribbean region. This, I'm advised, is in contrast to other areas of the Americas, for example, Latin America, where persons living in the CARICOM countries have the highest likelihood of dying prematurely from chronic non-communicable diseases, and this between the age ranging from 30 to 70. The challenge of these non-communicable diseases, in particular hypertension and diabetes, are the leading causes of morbidity in the Federation. Hypertension and diabetes, leading causes of morbidity in the Federation. The incidence of hypertension has remained fairly stable over the period 2010 to 2015, with approximately 107 new cases per annum. During that same period, the incidence of diabetes has trended upward with a mean of 95 cases per annum. Regarding complication of diabetes, like lower limb amputations, a mean of 39 cases were documented per annum over the 5-year period 2011 to 2015. And I'm advised at present we have 93 cases of chronic renal failure, and 14 are maintaining 2 dialysis modalities, the hemodialysis and the peritoneal dialysis. I hope I have the pronunciation right, Madam CMO. Thank you. The top 3 medical conditions that are treated at our JNF Hospital A&E room are asthma, diabetes, and hypertension. And maybe you can do a little explanation about this asthma and how it features in the context of what looks like more severe diabetes and hypertension and so on. For some people, asthma was like not so big a deal, and so I would want you, when we get there, to do a little explanation as part of the education of our people, because this has come out now as a matter of significant health concern here. Moreover, most of the patients accessing care at outpatients department at our JNF have multimorbidity of 2 or more concurrent chronic illnesses. That is, it's not one complaint, as my grandmother would say. It is more than one that is taking our people down. In this case, it is diabetes and hypertension. And hypertension, diabetes, and cardiac disease that are at play. I am advised that there has been a 25% increase in the incidence of cancer in the Federation between the period 2005 and 2015. And the most prevalent of such conditions are cervix cancer, breast cancer, prostate, and skin cancer. Women are mostly affected between the ages 50 and 59, and men, the challenge comes a bit later, 60 to 79. And then we also have to be aware that obesity is being estimated to be in 40% of the general population. And I know some may look at me, and I may look at the Deputy Commissioner of Police and advise you that we are working hard to take ourselves out of that category. In 2011, the National School Healthy Survey revealed that 32.5% of our secondary school children were overweight and 14.4% were obese. So we have to have greater activity in school and out of school if we are going to deal with this challenge. In the good old days, there was a view about people looking so nice and plump. In the modern day, this has become a challenge, and so part of this is how we re-educate people and so on. I come up in a home, for example, and my father used to say, you know, if he takes sick, he have something to keep him good. When he was told about one of my brothers who was very big, we call him Bull. My father would say, no. When he's sick, some of this here is going to help keep him for the days when he can't. So, in the midst of humor, though, the seriousness is that our views about life and about weight and so on, those views have been changing, and we need to reconcile them now. This problem is regional in nature, and in fact, it was some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, that it featured on the CARICOM agenda and then at the United Nations in the context of the reality that, as I said before, we were doing worse than other regions in terms of non-communicable diseases. CARICOM heads in 2016 suggested 3 things that we should do to deal with this situation. And we now have, in regard to the stats that I've given before, have to see which of these things we can do, and do very quickly to, as it were, reverse the trend. CARICOM heads asks that we ban smoking in public places. 2, that we ban the advertisement of potentially harmful foods which specifically target children. This is perhaps a matter which will be quite challenging, which of these foods. So the CMO, as part of the public education program, not necessarily today, we have to again engage our schools, our cafeterias, our workplaces, so that people are put on better alert. And thirdly, and the financial secretary said, this was not a recommendation for the record, that we elevate the taxes on foods high in sugar, salt, and trans fats. And I gather that a number of jurisdictions really have moved with the third one, to elevate the tax on foods high in sugar, salt, and trans fats, not so much as a revenue measure, but for the deterrent effect it perceived that this could have. Dominica in 2015, for example, implemented an excise tax of 20 cents per liter on soft drinks and 10% on energy drinks. And I am advised that there is an expanding body of literature supporting the effectiveness of fiscal policies such as these in reducing the consumption of unhealthy foods, drinks, and substances. So my cabinet will be looking at this in a very serious way. I want to appeal to the young people in particular, because when we are young, we take a lot of things for granted. We say we have a sweet tooth, and perhaps that is part of the CARICOM culture. All of us have a sweet tooth. The sugar cakes and all these things which did no harm to us, we felt like. All of these things perhaps we have to now look at in a significant way. I want to say to our young people, please do not squander your lives away through illness or violence. And equally to encourage our young people and our teachers to help them in changing their eating habits as it relates to sugary products, the salty foods. And of course, we want to encourage more exercise. Dr. Francesco Branca said this: nutritionally, people don't need any sugar in their diet. This is what the experts at the UN are saying. Nutritionally, people don't need any sugar in their diet. The World Health Organization recommends that if people do consume free sugars, they keep their intake below 10% of their total energy needs and reduce it to less than 5% for additional health benefits. This is equivalent to less than a single serving, at least 250 ml of a commonly consumed sugary drinks per day. In other words, we need very little additional sweeteners because most of the foods which we consume naturally have enough to keep us healthy and well. In closing then, the mission of the Team Unity government is to build a sustainable future for all of our people. And in order to achieve this, we will continue to work on reducing crime, protecting our borders, keeping our people safe and healthy, and promoting longevity. We are a beautiful and resilient country under God. Let us break the silence and flush out the criminals who disrespect our people, disrupt our peace, and are the purveyors of violence, rape, and evil in our country. Let us, as law-abiding citizens and residents, put aside our fears, our partisan politics, and do what we must to rid the criminals of the shelter and protection which some of them are receiving in our homes, in our neighbors' homes, in our alleyways and byways, in our communities, in our churches, in our institutions of learning, our business places, and our political entities. The criminals then must have no hiding place. They must have no friend. We have to draw a real line in the sand and take a stand for law and order. The life we will save as a consequence of this may be our very own, or that of a close friend or family member. We must redeem the times, consecrate the future, and give paramountcy to the imperatives of law and justice by doing the very best we can today and allow our great God to complete the job for us. I end finally by saluting our centenarians who today are recognized on National Centenarians Day. And our illustrious Governor General, we want to thank him because he is visiting several of these centenarians to let them know that at the highest level of the state, we value their contribution, their work, and we want them to continue to have a good life. So this year, we salute our 17 centenarians. 11 reside in St. Kitts and 6 in Nevis. We also highly commend the various family members, friends, and healthcare professionals who continue to diligently care for this special group of persons.